Good morning. My name is Lisa Daisel. A very warm welcome to our event this morning. We are joined by Mr. Amos Kova, sorry. He is from Registree and he will be talking to us about joining the workplace. So as we continue with the presentation, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A on Teams. We will either be attending to the questions as we go along with the presentation, or at the end of the presentation, there will also be time for your questions. So this morning, we're just starting with an introduction to our speaker, and I'm joined by my colleague, Mrs. Mandu Mukanya. Thank you, Mandu.
Thank you, Lisa. A warm welcome to all our attendees this morning. It gives me pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day. He is the Vice President of Registree, founder of SAPNA and AMAVA Talent, and a specialist in youth development. He has worked in various corporate organizations, including SAICA, CIMA, and Nedbank as a young talent specialist and project manager. He holds a number of qualifications from business schools, including an MBA. It gives me pleasure to welcome Mr. Amos Kova, Vice President, Registree. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Amos.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Makanya. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're well today. Thank you once again for UNISA for this opportunity for us to share our knowledge, expertise with students. I'm extremely passionate and excited about yet another opportunity to share with students. Fantastic. All right, so let me get straight into it. I am on load shedding at the moment. I'm hoping and praying that my Wi-Fi backup does carry us throughout this load shedding period, which started at 10. So by 12:30, the electricity should come back. So just quick background about myself. I currently work for Registree, which is a company that matches grads with employers. We've developed technology based on crypto that makes it easier for employers to be matched with students, because we're trying to solve the youth unemployment situation in the country. My master's thesis was also done on graduate unemployment. I think I've mentioned this to Mrs. Makanya that I'm busy registering for my PhD, and I want to look at how economies on the African continent can include young talent and their expertise and the skills that they bring. So it's something that's very close to my heart. Today, though, I'm going to be talking about a number of skills and attributes that you need to help you transition into the place of work. It is a mindset, and it's also a level of consciousness that you need to reach as a student as to how prepared you should be for the place of work. But most importantly, it's also just being aware of what employers look for when they consider graduates to join them permanently. My slides, okay, my slides are not moving. Right, so these are the topics or themes I'm going to cover in this session. Firstly, I'm going to look at self-awareness. Then we'll talk business ethics. I just want to confirm, can you hear me and can you still see my slides? Because I can't see the team screen.
Yes, thank you, Amos.
Awesome, cool. And then after business ethics, we're going to look at business etiquette. As part of business etiquette, I'm also going to touch on professionalism and communication in the workplace. And then we will do personal goal setting and vision boards. And then I will conclude with networking skills. Because if you look at all of these topics, we're basically saying that in order for you to transition successfully and to join the workplace, these are some of the skills that you should learn, master, and be aware of by empowering yourself and reading up on these topics. Right. So I think it's been mentioned already that you are welcome to engage. What I've done at the end of each topic, we're going to pause, reflect, and I'm going to take a couple of questions. So please feel free to jot down your questions as we go through each of the topics. Engagement is critical. Remember, you guys are young professionals, you've got views, you've read up about certain things, you might have read something that you're not sure about, and you probably want to confirm with me. So this is the platform where we can exchange information and engage a little bit around certain topics. So in terms of our approach when it comes to enabling learning and growth, we and myself, obviously, I am not a lecturer on these platforms. I'm a facilitator of information, so our role is to create a safe space and compassionate environment that will be conducive for learning and free of judgment. So there's no such a thing as, a stupid question. So we basically use learning content. We present carefully selected and packaged learning solutions, as you'll see, and our teaching methodology encourages participation through the questions you're going to ask to verify whether you've got the right information. We can guide your thinking and the process that will enable learning. Personal development, I need to say that it is a personal thing. You need to make sure that you own it, you own the journey, you own the information that you take in, and you are responsible on how you apply that information. So through the use of certain frameworks that we use, tested material, we take you on a journey of self-discovery and growth. But you can only grow as much as you expose yourself and allow yourself to be vulnerable and take in the information. I think I've mentioned that we are passionate about development of youth, and we are seriously committed to being catalysts of change. For me personally, even if I just get one testimony that the session has been useful. What was exciting with the last session we did, there was a lady that contacted me via LinkedIn, and she said the session was very helpful. She had an interview, I think the following week, and she got the job. So that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to make this training practical and real in your life, and it needs to empower you and equip you with skills to become better. Our aim is to fully empower and transform the way graduates think and operate, because it all starts in the minds, ladies and gents. You will never achieve anything practically if you have not convinced yourself that A, you can do it, and B, you've thought about it and visualized it in order for it to come to pass. So, first topic, self-awareness. The important thing about self-awareness is having a conscious and objective knowledge of yourself on many levels or on many areas of your life. If you look at the picture here, you've got a puppy, but in the shade, it looks like Batman, right? And only you know your ability and the strengths that you have. However, you need to be realistic and clear on the knowledge and the abilities that you hold as an individual. So this requires you to do a lot of self-reflection as well as asking for feedback. We've got something called blind spots, of areas that we are not aware of our strengths or weaknesses. So if we start with your strengths, I'm really hoping that by now, the CV that you have, that you've written about yourself, can clearly articulate your strengths, not only from an academic perspective, but in terms of your personality. What are you good at? What are the skills that you are confident that you can apply in the workplace? You also need not to forget about extracurricular activities. Some of the strengths that you've built up in sport, for instance, have got other aspects that they build and that they contribute to in terms of your other strengths. To give you a practical example, if you've consistently achieved and played a certain sport, let's say from high school through varsity, you will definitely pick up certain leadership skills or certain strengths, or it will teach you about, endurance, mind over matter, and all of those things can be applied in the place of work. So when you think about your strengths, you need to think holistically about your life. You need to articulate them in the CV interview setup. And then in terms of weaknesses, we all have weaknesses. There is no way that anyone will not have a weakness. Those weakness or development areas, you need to know them. You need to think through them so that when you get to an interview or the job, when you do your development plan, you can focus your development around your weaknesses or areas that requires further development. And then when it comes to your thoughts, again, you need to be aware of your thinking ability on either how it empowers you to perform better or how it hinders you in certain actions or situations. Emotionally, or in terms of your own emotions, you need to be conscious of your emotional strength or intellectual ability, and it is important to know what triggers you, what you're passionate about, what makes you emotional, and align your strengths or your work around what you really feel is close to your heart. It is also important to know where your emotional weaknesses are and make sure that in the work environment you're able to manage that. A lot of people, especially as African men, we tend not to show or display emotion. But when you get to the workplace, people want to see emotion. Emotion, expression, facial expression. When you get to the workplace, you will deal with all sorts of situations. People that require you to show empathy, sympathy. You probably deal with loss in the workplace. As a colleague and as a leader or future leader, you need to show vulnerability. And that shows that you are genuine as a human being. I think gone are the days where good leaders need to be, display masculinity, even in the wrong context. It's important to be yourself and display and show certain emotions as you feel them. And then lastly, when it comes to actions and behavior, the way you think, the way you perceive things ultimately gets played out in the actions or how you behave. So often when you behave in a certain way, let's use the example of anger, for instance. If you lose it at work and you display anger, it shows that you are out of control when it comes to your emotions, or your thoughts, or you have not worked on your weaknesses. So it's important to start doing the work internally about understanding yourself, knowing your limits. If you have a weakness or something that you feel strongly about, you need to know how much you can push yourself or how far somebody can push you. Then, based on the knowledge of yourself, when you approach that point where you're going to snap, you need to know what to do to remove yourself from the situation or to regain control. This is very important because it shows emotional intelligence and self-awareness, the extent to which you know yourself, your limits, and what you can do, right? Do you have tips in terms of asking for feedback from others and what to do with the feedback? That's a brilliant question from Franz. Franz, thank you so much. Tips on how to ask for feedback from others. So Franz, there are two ways of doing this. The first one is to simply be observant to what people say, because sometimes people give us feedback without us asking in an informal way. People will tell you that the way you just spoke to someone they didn't like. I'm just giving you an example. Or what you did just now was great. Or people pay compliments to us. And I like the second part of your question, saying what to do with that feedback. But before I respond to what to do with that feedback, I think it's important to know how to respond to feedback. I mean, a friend of mine the other day, I can't remember what compliment I paid him. And he said to me, "I know, right?" And I was like, okay, I was a bit taken back because I expected a thank you, on a compliment. So you shouldn't go to the extreme where you display arrogance, where somebody pays you a genuine compliment or gives you feedback and you pretend like you knew about it. So to answer your question, like I said, the first way is to be observant to what people say. And then secondly, you can, let's say you are now on this assignment where you are trying to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You can go to people and say to them, you would like feedback on something specifically. Can they tell you, how they observed you, what they think about you in a specific way? And yeah, and the best people normally to use, Franz, are people close to you. Your family knows you best. Your siblings, your kids, your partner, people that you work with. So you can do it in that way. In the work environment, let's say you're using the balance scorecard to evaluate performance. There is a part built into it where you have to get feedback from your peers or your colleagues. So you can go to them and say, can they give you feedback on your leadership style, on your communication, etc. So you can do it formally as well. And then what you do with that feedback, Franz, becomes a starting point for you to know your strengths. So you can document it on your CV. Most of the CVs these days, you've got a grid where you show, or a table where you show your skills and your strengths, etc. You can put it on your CV, or it's just something that you can journal and work on for your own personal development. I hope I've answered your question. The second question is from Khumutso. What would be examples of showing your vulnerability at work? Is this not frowned upon in the workplace? Khumutso. I'm not sure if Khumutso is a male or female. Examples of showing vulnerability. Firstly, as a leader, people need to know that you are real and genuine. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to show vulnerability. Let's use a simple example of a colleague that has passed. When you've got a colleague that has passed in your team, the basic things you would do as a leader or as a colleague is to get involved in either the planning of the memorial or, you know, doing little things, little gestures like, you know, writing cards for the family, going around to colleagues, and communicating and just showing that you care. Vulnerability to the extent of showing emotions and being emotional, you can decide how you want to display it, but it's important for people to see emotion. I'm not sure how much you guys are on social media. There was on LinkedIn some time back, I think it was a year or so ago, there was a CEO that sent a video of himself crying after they had to retrench staff. And the funny thing is that a lot of people thought that it was fake, because why would you take your phone and videoize yourself crying? Personally, I also thought it was fake. But then you've got other people that thought, okay, this is, you know, the guy is genuine. So it just depends on your audience. My personal view, because that's just how I am. I think I'm old school. I wouldn't go to that extent where I want to show vulnerability in that way. So I think it's just being aware of the situation that you're in and being considerate and showing compassion and empathy. I hope I've answered your question, Khumut. And then the last question from Anonymous is, how do we strike a balance between becoming too emotional and being emotionally available? I like that. I think being emotionally available is actually the sweet spot, Anonymous, because when you are available emotionally, you show emotion appropriately as you feel it and as you see it. But becoming too emotional also borders on being unprofessional. Yeah, I think it's just about showing the mood and responding as a human being as opposed to being a boss. Because at the end of the day, before we are workers or colleagues or bosses, we are human beings. We are somebody's child, we are somebody's partner, and we've got Ubuntu. And I think that's a level where we all connect, regardless of your background, your race, your gender, your belief, you know, regardless of who you are, we connect at that point of being human and human being. And you would know how to act and respond as human beings. I remember when I lost I think it was my mother. Was it my mother or my father? I can't remember. So I've got neighbors. My neighbors are Hindus, and they an elderly couple. And when we had a prayer session with lots of people in the house, they actually came. Though they are Hindu, they practice a different religion to us. They came for the prayer meeting. And that to me was heartwarming, because it shows that you've got humanity. We put our different religions and, you know, whatever aside, and at that point in time, we show support and we show humanity. Are you all comfortable with your questions? Or with your answers? Let me put it that way. I'm going to go back to sharing again. Lee, I saw an email from you. Are you winning or not?
The video only came through as an image, Amos. So I'm not
Okay.
sure. I think that video is not our friend this morning.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to continue. So unfortunately, we can't watch the video, but I'm still going to try and send it to you later. Basically, the gist of that video talks about how we as human beings tend to look at other people and we envy what they are good at and what we are necessarily not as good as or as good at. And we get irritated because we are competing with others. I think when it comes to being aware of your own strengths and weaknesses and who you are, based on what we went through here around self-awareness, you need to get to a point where you are comfortable with and content with who you are, what you are able to do, so that if you see somebody that's better than you in an area, it doesn't irritate you or rub you up the wrong way. I don't know if I'm making sense. So Carl Jung says everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So instead of you reacting and becoming jealous, let it remind you of what you're good at as well. Then you can applaud the other person. It's great that you've achieved well. It's good that you've done well in that, knowing that you've got your own areas that you do well at. And the biggest trap we can fall into as young professionals is to compete with other people. The only person you should compete with is yourself. You should set targets and goals for yourself and compete at becoming better at who you are, not other people. Applaud other people, congratulate them, but do not let their success start, reflecting poorly on you. Okay, so this is now the official end of the first topic. We're going to go into business ethic now. Are there any other questions before we go into business ethics?
Amos, there's just a question that came through.
Awesome.
I'm struggling with my self-confidence and not sure how to work on it.
Awesome. Is there a name or is it anonymous?
It's also anonymous.
Okay. Anonymous, struggling with self-confidence is a deep issue. It's a deep-seated issue. There are normally reasons why you struggle with self-confidence. Now, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist because they would take it a lot deeper than I would. They would go back into your childhood, see if there were any traumas that happened, things that you are aware of, or subconsciously that prevents you from feeling confident about yourself. So I'm not going to go that deep, but it's up to you as to how far you want to take it back. But in the professional context, and the same thing applies to sport as well, when you are struggling with self-confidence, it is probably because you feel that you have not done enough or you don't deserve being at the spot that you're at. And one of the ways of overcoming that is to reassure yourself, look at your past achievements, what has gotten you to that point. Let me make it practical. So you start work with a company tomorrow and you don't feel confident about you in the workplace. So I would say you go back and tell yourself that you've earned your degree, you applied for the role, you were appointed on merit, and you deserve being there. That's the first thing you need to come to terms with. And then based on that, you must tell yourself that you will equip yourself. You then need to acknowledge that though you've earned your spot to be there, you are still feeling insecure, right? Then you'll say that you need to, you will ensure that you acquire all the skills that will make you feel confident in the workplace. And that's a mental thing. If you know the skills that are required, read up about them, find someone to mentor you, to guide you, so that you feel the level of confidence. But let me admit to you, as a VP, past CEO, current chairman, and as a board member at my age of close to 50, you will never be 100% confident in most situations you end up in. If you do, Anonymous, then there's a problem, because you either don't understand the extent to which you need to stretch yourself and work hard, or you are overconfident. And being overconfident is dangerous. So I think if there's a healthy balance of humility in you feeling, that you're not confident enough in the role, that's fine, as long as it doesn't become limiting, where it affects your performance because you start doing a project or work and you discard it because you feel that what you've done is not worth it. I mean, I've sat in meetings and training sessions where you've got quieter people in the group where you can see that they're not confident. But when you allow them to speak and contribute, they give better ideas than the ones that display confidence. So get to a point where you understand your own limit. I hope that answers your question. Lisa, can we move on? Was that the only question?
Yes, thank you. Just in addition, I've posted a link to some information we've got on our website about self-confidence, and also just encouraging, if there's specific or a conversation that you would want to have about self-confidence, just send us an email to then arrange a conversation with one of our counselors.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Anonymous and to everyone in the room, I am available on social media. If you want to pick up any conversation with me, you can. The best way to contact me is via LinkedIn. I do have a Facebook profile. I don't use it often. I don't look at it. I don't use it for business. I get overwhelmed by Facebook because I see everything and everyone, even people I went to primary school with, and that just becomes overwhelming for me. But LinkedIn I use on a daily basis. Please reach out if you want to have a further discussion around self-confidence. I'm happy to have this discussion with you. The last thing I just want to say about self-confidence, though, self-confidence is probably one of those differentiators when you walk into the workplace. I'm going to share my experience with you. Remember, I used to be in banking. I used to be with professional bodies in young talent. We used to recruit grads, train them, etc. And one thing that I noticed years ago that I still continue to notice, where we come from as professionals, and especially Black professionals, where we end up in the workplace with other professionals that are the same age, or let me say graduates, who come from better prepared environments like private schools. Maybe I'm just going to make an example, to a university that's not as highly ranked as mine. And we all know the history of South Africa. You've got the former Black universities, and you've got your top tier universities like Stellenbosch or whatever. So sometimes what tends to happen when in the workplace, we get there and we feel that the other person is better than me. He's had a better upbringing, he's been to a private school, whatever it may be. And that affects or knocks our confidence. That should not be the case. You need to make sure that you believe in your ability. I often say to students, your upbringing, and one thing that a lot of us Blacks have in in common is that somewhere in our backgrounds, there was a struggle of some sort, whether it was financial or whether it was witchcraft or whatever it was. There were struggles that you dealt with, and those struggles are designed to make you a stronger person, not a weaker person, not a person that doubts himself. This is why you need to look back and look at your past victories and successes, and the knocks and the scars that you have should give you the confidence in yourself. But I'm happy to engage further on that. Let's move on to business ethics. Now, business ethics can be defined as key professional and social skills required by recent graduates for business or the place of work. So just an overview then of business ethics. It is a study of appropriate business policies and practices regarding potential controversial subjects, including corporate governance, insider trading, bribery, discrimination, corporate social responsibility, and fiduciary responsibilities. It is also a set of ethics and principles that define what is good and bad. And then lastly, set of guidelines that controls the behavior and the way members of an organization interact with one another. Why is it important for you to know business ethics? Is because when you join a company, there's an expected behavior or patterns that is required for you to comply with. And that's why you need to make sure that you fit in and you behave appropriately. The types of business ethics we're going to look at in this session is first personal responsibility, economic responsibility, technical ethics, legal responsibility, representative or official responsibility, and loyalty. And that would make up business ethics. So the benefits of business ethics is that it increases employability, loyalty, and the level of morale. It strengthens management team bond. It increases short and long-term profitability, because if your people are efficient and effective, they deliver more and they deliver better. This is why companies are spending a lot of money to make sure that the people are fully equipped. Even during COVID, the mindset and mentality of people has become important to companies. It enhances business reputation in community, peer-to-peer, and regulators and investors. So when we look at code of ethics and standards, there are a couple of examples, and I'm sharing 10 with these. Money management, how cash credit cards and cash are handled. So every company, it's not only a financial institution, has got ethics and codes of standard when it comes to how you deal with these things. And normally when you get dismissed and you get red flagged or blacklisted, you would have contravened one of these standards or ethics, right? The second one is diversity rules. Creating inclusive environment free of discrimination. This is why in the place of work, you never want to be caught discriminating or saying something offensive about somebody else's religion or their culture or the way they do things. We try and be inclusive, and the only way you can be inclusive is by being aware. You need to know how somebody else's, religion is, and you respect it, and you don't do or say things that are offensive. Sexual harassment, you need to prevent, it prevents unwanted sexual misconduct. a lot of people fall into this trap. When you start out in the workplace, you've obviously never worked. You are likely, most likely, to find colleagues that you find attractive, that are pleasing on the eye. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to make sure that you don't make comments that are disrespectful, and try not to comment people on their looks, because you don't know how they're going to respond to it. If it's something beautiful they're wearing, you can do that, or if they've done something well, you can, but just be aware of borderline comments that might get you into trouble. And also, I know some of us are very physical people. We like to, touch, maybe hug, hold, but in the workplace, you can't do that. And you just need to be aware of other people. Employee privacy, it helps employees feel comfortable to come to work. You don't want a boss to call you over the weekends. They need to respect your privacy, your time with your family, and the same goes for you. Again, the example of the colleague that you had. If you fancy the person and you want to take them out for drinks, you better make sure that things are consensual and you don't create an opportunity for them to come back to HR and report you that Amos called me over the weekend, or he's too much in my space. If you want to have coffee with a person, etc. And I'm using real practical examples because this is what happens in the place of work. Consumer privacy builds confidence that the company cares. So how you protect the data, the information, the contact details of your consumers, that's very important. And a lot of companies, if not all the companies, have got regulations around this, like the POPIA Act or the POPI Act. Make sure you know the policies, you read them. Normally, when you get to the place of work, you get inducted. While you're doing your induction, they give you a whole lot of documents to read. Make sure you read those documents and you remember them, because there's going to come a time that you need to act, and you need to act in line with those policies. Then number 6 is licensing requirements required by law for some industries, depending on what industry you're in. If you're an engineer, for instance, there's the SAPS standards that you need to acquaint yourself with. There are certain licensing or what is it called, patent regulations that you need to deal with. So I think that the point here is that understand which of these ethical standards or codes are relevant to your industry, and you read up about them. Security measures, employers are required to create safe working environments. You should not feel threatened, or your colleagues should not feel threatened by your behavior. And then truthful statement in sales, an ethical standard required by some industries. If you're in the sales environment, I mean, I have this example, and I'm not sure if I shared it the last time, of a dodgy salesperson that I dealt with years ago at Audi when I bought a car. And everything was fine with this young man. We did everything okay. And then right at the end, there was something that he wasn't honest about. When we were doing the transaction, he agreed to everything, and right at the end, he did not disclose certain things. And then as I was signing the agreement, I then decided to pick up the phone and say to him, what we agreed is not in here. Then he said to me, don't worry, I've spoken to my dealer principal, you will get it, or it will be done on the car. Lo and behold, it was never done. When I went to the dealer principal, he said it was never mentioned to him. So that was quite annoying to me, because I then had no grounds to challenge them on it. cut a long story short, years later, walk into a different dealership looking for a car again. Guess who pops up? The same salesman. So at this point, I was obviously not the nicest person. And I basically told him what he had done before, and I told the dealer principal, and I told them that I didn't want to deal with him. And then again, a few years later, to my absolute shock and horror, I think this was during COVID, I bumped into this gentleman on the street, and he was not looking good. He was looking for money, for change, basically. And at that point, instead of it reminding me of what had happened, I think my humanity then kicked in. I was like, wow. But the point I want to make is that there are certain things or policy or standards that if you breach them in the company, they will literally make you end up on the street. And some industries will red flag you if you have either sexually harassed somebody or you broke one of the rules when it comes to money management. You will struggle to find a job in the same industry. So these are quite serious for you to take note of and to adhere to them. And I know that when you start in the company, it's overwhelming. There's a lot of these policies and standards to read. What you could do with your manager is to do check-ins now and again and just ask about these policies. How are they applied? What are the things that you need to look out for? And just know what the, basic no-go areas are and how you can comply. Environmental policies, following regulations and best practice to be green. Some companies, I've worked for companies that are big on the whole green thing. They do the recycling, it's almost like they expect you to behave in a certain way. So again, social media then becomes important. If you work for a company that is big on green, and when you are busy on social media showing stuff that is contrary to that or doing stuff that goes against it, whatever it may be, that is not good for the environment, you could be taken to task because organizations expect you to behave in certain ways and display consistent behavior. We're not schizophrenic. You can't at work behave in a certain way and then in your personal life on social media you are seen doing something totally different. The last one is fair hiring practices, preventing discrimination in hiring. If you end up in a situation where you contribute to the hiring process of candidates, please make sure that you don't discriminate on any area, whether it's race, gender, background, qualification, and you yourself, you should not at any point feel that you are being discriminated against. And if you do feel that way, you've got your company's policies. You can go back and challenge and say that our company's policy, says X, Y, and therefore you should not be discriminated against. The last example I just want to share, and I'm not going to share which company this was, but I remember we had quite an interesting example of this, where somebody came. So we got the call from one of the offices in the region to say that we've just had a gentleman that has joined the company and he refuses to use the male bathrooms. And at that time, we didn't have unisex bathrooms. But then when we got involved and we solved the situation and we spoke to the candidate, we then asked him, why did you not disclose at the interview that you choose to be, though you're a man, but you choose not to use male bathrooms, etc. And he said to us, if he had disclosed, there was a high probability or a chance of him not being hired, which is a fair response, because obviously he's got past experience probably, and he knows that maybe the company he had applied to was not ready. But the bottom line was that he was a guy who came to the interview and everybody saw him and they were happy and they hired him. And then when he started work, he was dressed like a woman and he didn't want to use the male bathrooms. And we had to accommodate him. We had to make sure that at that time we introduced what are they called, unisex bathrooms. So it goes back to knowing your rights and knowing what you're dealing with. Common mistakes when it comes to business ethics. Don't assume business as usual is business that is ethical. You need to make use of the policies and principles that are put in place as checks and balances to make sure that business is ethical. Because you could be dealing with people that are not doing business in a straightforward way, and then you don't do your checks and balances, and you are held responsible, whether it's money laundering or whatever you're dealing with. You always need to declare conflict of interest. So let's say you join a company and you've had your own hustle or startup that's doing something similar to what the company does, which is normal because today's students are very entrepreneurial. Don't hide it, because if it comes up and at the time you're doing your induction, you were told to declare conflict of interest, you will be dismissed, as simple as that. And then create a paper trail. It is very important for you to manage your emails. When you have communication with people, keep track, save things, create subfolders. You never know what you might be accused of, or you might be part of an investigation, and you need to have a paper trail to show that you received this information, you responded in a certain way, this person didn't respond, etc. Always think of a third way. You know, people always say that there are two sides to a story, but sometimes you need to think of alternatives. You need to think outside the box. Don't get caught into single track thinking about solutions and situations. Think all legal advice is ethical advice. Think again, because not necessarily. You need to be selective of where you get your advice from. Google is not the most, trustworthy source most of the time. That uncle that has been there and he thinks he knows it, it's nice to listen to him, but I would suggest that you get a second opinion on most things that you do. In the same way that we go to a doctor, we feel like, I don't trust this guy, this is maybe not what I think is happening. You get a second opinion. Same thing applies in the place of work as well. Simple, yes. Challenging, most certainly. Things are not as simple as they look. You often need to ask questions, ask to understand, and dig deeper for you to understand. So being naive in the workplace will get you into trouble. Any questions at this point?
Yes, Amos, there are two questions that came in and also a comment. So the questions, what must I do if I made a mistake at work that has big repercussions for my organization?
Cool. You probably need to leave before you get fired. No, I'm joking. Mistakes are common. We all make mistakes. So I once had a boss that used to say to me, I don't care what decision you take, as long as you can qualify and explain to me your reasoning behind that decision. But again, in the place of work, there are mistakes and there are mistakes. If it's a big mistake that costs the company its reputation or revenue or profit, then it's a lot more serious than a simple thing that you can quickly fix. So I think the best thing there is not to sit on it. So let's say you made a mistake today and you realize, oops, this is gonna make us lose a big client. Don't sit on it until your boss discovers. Uguti, the client, they go to a braai over the weekend and that client tells your boss, by the way, I've moved my account, kind of thing. You need to act immediately. Go and explain to your boss, you've just done something, and you think there's a problem, kind of thing. I think when you do it quickly, it shows firstly that you understand the implications of it and you understand that something needs to be done immediately. Then there's time for your boss to intervene. Depending on what it is, they can pick up the phone and say to someone, can you speak to this person? Or can you stop this? Can you reverse this? Do you understand? So it's important for you to act immediately and explain what you have done wrong, and maybe think of solutions as well and be proactive and say to your boss, can I check? Can I, phone this department to do this, etc. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Amos. And then the second question is, how do you manage your social media so that you don't get into trouble with your employer?
That's a good one. So the video that I tried sharing with you, there was a part in that video where he talks about we often become envious of people based on what they share on social media. So you see someone, sharing stuff on whatever. For me, social media starts with WhatsApp statuses, because you're throwing it out there. Then you can go to Twitter, Facebook, what's the other one called? Instagram, and LinkedIn. So those are all things that you share on social media. And the video talks about the fact that more often than not, it is fake. I mean, he makes an example of somebody that he knows who is unemployed, but on social media, it looks different. So we tend to exaggerate things on social media, or them not being a true reflection of what's happening. So to avoid getting into trouble, know the expected professional conduct or behavior of your company and truly live it as a brand ambassador. Then by doing that, you will not be caught by mistake doing something that's not in line with your company, because your company is underpinned by certain values and ethical behavior, that you need to display. I think once you connect to those and they are in sync, in line with who you are as a person, the likelihood of you being caught on the wrong side of the law is slim. However, let me make it practical just to conclude. If your behavior already is in a certain way, or you are showing out there that, let's say you're a party animal, I don't know, you smoke weed, what's that thing, the hubbly thing, whatever it may be. Let's say that's your current lifestyle. And you get into the company or a company where that's not normal behavior. I always say, in a company, the best way or the safest way is to look at the guys at the top. Look at the CEO, look at your board, the top dogs, how they behave, and emulate that behavior most of the time. Obviously, there are situations where you've got CEOs that are out of control, but more often than not, your directors, your executives, those are the people that display the right behavior. And just try to get in line. I know this is a big issue because I dealt with a student a couple of years ago who struggled to adjust. She was in quite a serious environment where people are very corporate, and that was not her. Yena, she was wild on, social media and stuff like that. And it eventually came up at work. She was told very nicely to tone down on social media. So yeah, you just need to be aware and try and adjust without losing yourself. There will be rare opportunities where you feel like you are definitely a misfit. And the best thing to do for you, instead of ruining your career and getting into trouble, is to probably start looking for the right environment for yourself, because it means that you're not in the right place and you won't be free and you won't be happy.
Thank you, Amos. There's one more question that came through now. Anonymous is asking, how do we effectively and professionally challenge our colleagues or supervisors to avoid being naive?
I like Anonymous is very smart, and Anonymous asks lots of questions. So there's something called managing upwards, Anonymous. Not sure if you've heard of it before, but the concept applies to traditionally management is a top-down approach where you manage your team, but sometimes you need to possess the skills of managing your own manager, and that requires you to be good at communication and good at convincing and getting your manager to buy in to what's important to them. So firstly, you need to know what's on their scorecard, what is important to them, and then you can manage him or her by contributing to that. So the way to encourage our colleagues is remember, at work you are united by common goals and objectives. So you need to show people that their contribution and the work is important, it's valued, and you need to show them how it's making the team function better. If you manage to do that, people will support you in your ideas, and you will bring contributions that add value to the bigger team. So it's not about you, but about the team. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Amos. We've got another question here, which is now the other side of the social media coin.
Yeah.
Somebody is saying that I've chosen not to partake in social media. How can this negatively affect me?
Good question. Is that Anonymous again?
Yes.
Okay. So Anonymous, that's a very good question. You don't have to be part of social media. Personally, I don't have the time for social media. I don't see the value that Instagram, Twitter, Facebook adds to my career or my business, right? But I see the value of LinkedIn. And for me, what's the other one? WhatsApp. WhatsApp is for friends and family. But I'm not, I think I shared a status once by mistake. My phone was in my pocket, it wasn't locked. And then the next thing, I'm getting messages from friends saying, what are you doing back at the old employer? So somehow it pressed something that showed my location. I checked in at the ex-employer. So to answer your question, the only way I see it negatively affecting you, if you're not on a relevant platform like LinkedIn. Let's say you're starting up your career, you've got your first job, but you obviously want to move on to the next job or position yourself to future employers, etc. Then LinkedIn is important, because what you share on LinkedIn, who you follow, the engagements or the discussions that you have become important. But you don't have to. So look at your own situation, Anonymous. Decide whether your career needs you to be active on LinkedIn. Maybe you're in an industry that I'm not into, let's say entertainment or marketing or whatever. Some of these, what do they call them? These artistic, careers. Then I think in a case like that, you will need Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. But if not, and if you don't like it, if it's not second nature to you, don't force yourself by just being on those platforms, because that's where people are. I hope that answers your question. I'm going to move on to how are we doing with time, Lisa?
It's now 12:15, so if I'm not sure how long you still need, but we said that we will finish at 12:30.
Awesome. Let me fly through this then. So 5 types of business ethics: workplace etiquette, table manners and meal etiquette, professionalism, communication etiquette, and meeting etiquette. These are all things that you need to master as you transition into the place of work. Now my slides are not moving again. Cool. So office behavior. Culture and expectations differ from company to company. So what's rude at one company, it's normal in the other. Again, I said you need to watch the top guys. How they behave, it sets the tone for everyone else. You need to find what is acceptable and what is not acceptable by reading your company handbook or your policies. Will give you an idea of that. You need to pay attention on how executives behave. Like I said, stick to standard rules such as don't heat up excessively smelling foods in the break room. Simple things. If you're having, I don't know, morojo or pap and fleis, maybe not pap and fleis, fish for lunch, just be aware of the office environment. If you're in an open office, just be aware of how it might affect other people. And then table manners and meal etiquette. This is very important. I'm not saying and I'm not assuming that we all don't know how to behave when it comes to professional setups, but if you don't, and a lot of us, I mean, we've been through the past where you got to the place of work and you had to learn a lot of new things. So the basics here is that you can Google a lot of these things or teach yourself. Know which cutlery and crockery to use. It becomes embarrassing if you get invited. Let's say you're a top achiever or you're a newbie and the CEO invites you for lunch, and then you rock up there and you don't know what to do. So read up, watch videos, know what to do with cutlery, know what to do with your napkins. When it comes to ordering items, again, watch what other people are doing. If you get menus and people are ordering stuff around 200 Rand, don't go for 400 or 600 Rand stuff, And again, just the basics, don't start eating before everyone's food has arrived. It's just courtesy. If you want, let's say, salt or pepper or whatever on the other side of the table, it's not good practice to be reaching over people's food, ask for stuff to be passed to you, chew with your mouth closed. When you need a waiter's attention, this is not the best way of doing it. Trust me, I've seen people do this. And then after the meal is over, you need to fold your napkin and put it, next to you on the plate. You don't scrunch it up and dump it on your table. So these are just basic table manners and meal etiquette that I maybe might take for granted, but for you, it could be new territory. So the point is that you need to empower yourself and read up about it so you don't stand out as being seen as somebody who behaves awkwardly. Being professional means contributing to pleasant, productive, and inclusive work environment. So keep your word. When you say you're going to do something, or you tell someone you're going to deliver at such a time, deliver. If it means you stay late for work, or you don't sleep, deliver on time. Be punctual. Normally they say if you arrive on time, you're late. Rather get there early, and that shows that you are respecting your time and the other person's time that you're meeting. Always remain calm, even if the situation is heated and it requires you to show anger. Try and stay calm. You'll be very surprised. We spoke about giving feedback earlier, and I was very surprised when I joined Registree about 2 years ago. After I went through my interviews and everything, one of the board members told me that one thing they appreciate about me is the fact that I can stay calm and keep stuff together. Now, that was a form of feedback for me. And what it did for me personally, it made me aware, so that going forward, or currently, when I find myself in a situation where I should be panicking, I simply don't. Because you'll be very surprised, as a leader, people look at you. If the boss or the CEO starts panicking, guess what? Everyone is going to do the same thing. Be flexible. Sometimes you'll have to stay late, show up early at work, do whatever it takes for you to get your job done. You also need to learn how to be diplomatic. The whole thing of managing your manager is about your ability to communicate and be diplomatic. There's likely to be people that you don't like at work. Work and life is just not a popularity contest, but it doesn't mean that you're going to take people on. You need to be diplomatic in how you deal with them. And then lastly, accept constructive feedback or criticism. I take constructive criticism as feedback, actually, because it is there to improve your ability and your skills, and make you better as a person. On communication etiquette, if we can touch on phone etiquette, lots of your relationships will hinge on your ability to communicate well and effectively. The less miscommunication you have, the better. So sometimes emails or written messages don't show the real story. If you can't pick up the phone and phone to the person, speak to the person, or walk to their desk. When it comes to the office, don't speak too loudly. If you're in an open office setup, also don't speak too softly, because your client can't be going, "Pardon, sorry, I can't hear you." Find the right level that everybody talks at, that's audible. And then again, you can ask someone, "Can you hear me clearly? Am I audible?" You can ask colleagues or somebody on the other side of the phone. And then never interact with your phone while you're with someone. It shows respect. When you have a meeting with someone, you either put your phone away or you turn it face down, upside down in front of you. If you're in a conference call and you're not speaking, please learn to mute yourself so that you don't become a distraction, because you just never know what background noises there are, and it becomes irritating to other people. Email etiquette: always aim to answer internal emails within 1 day and external emails within 3 days. Some companies will have policies depending on the role that you have. If you're in sales or customer service, for instance, there will be a policy that says we will respond to your email within 6 hours, 12 hours. Just be aware of that. Avoid overusing exclamation marks and smiley faces. Those things are perfect for WhatsApp, but for work, you don't do them. And then also understand the difference between reply and reply all. There's nothing more irritating than people getting emails because somebody decided to do reply all. The comment is meant for one person and the whole team gets it. And then check with each party before you make an introduction. So if you're doing something and you think that you need to introduce people on a project, get their consent. Phone them or email them and say, I've realized that Joe so-and-so need to be part of that. Are you comfortable if I introduce him? Then you do it, as opposed to just creating a WhatsApp group and adding people. I mean, don't you hate that? When people create WhatsApp groups without telling you, and then all of a sudden you're in this group. In-person etiquette. So steer clear of complimenting someone's appearance, since this can make people feel uncomfortable. Maintain eye contact. This is a big one, very big one. I picked it up a lot when I worked with some of the universities. African people, there are some cultures where, as a sign of respect, you don't make eye contact with your elderly or with your elders. In the workplace, a sign of, well, not making eye contact could be seen as you not being honest and not having the confidence. Remember the question that we had earlier. So you need to practice and to learn how to do eye contact without making people feel intimidated and scared. And the best tip normally is to actually look at the nose bridge, because if you look in somebody's eyes too much, you might be, I don't know, uncomfortable or overwhelmed. Match people speaking volume. If somebody comes to you and they've got a slightly lower tone, you also kind of go to their level. But if they're screaming at you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to scream as well. So just find the right level that people are comfortable at. Show interest in what people are saying by using the appropriate body language and the gestures as well. General meeting rules. Meetings are an important aspect of business communication that allows teams to share ideas, discuss strategy, and get on the same page about projects and priorities. Meetings are meant to be productive. You don't sit and waffle in meetings. You need to know what the agenda is. So if you setting up a meeting, send the agenda out before the meeting, a week or so, depending. If it's a board meeting, it's normally 3 weeks or so. So people can prepare for discussion in advance. Be mindful of time zones. A lot of us now work with people all over the globe, and thanks to COVID. So just know the time zones. Somebody who's in Australia is 6 hours ahead of behind. Somebody in Europe will be an hour or two, depending on day saving or winter. Just be aware of the time zones. If you arrange a lunch meeting, either ask people to bring their lunch with them, so it's a working lunch, or if you're in the kind of company there where you can order lunch, you do that. But if you can, try and avoid lunch meetings, because some people feel it's their own time. You also need to introduce people when they're new in meetings, when they come for the first time. It's your responsibility as the chairperson to allow those introductions to happen. In-person etiquette, you always need to give attendees up to 5 minutes to settle before you get into the agenda. So let's say the meeting starts at 12 o'clock. You allow people to arrive, depending on how strict your company is, and then 5 minutes or so, when majority are there, you can then get straight into it, as opposed to just arriving and starting before everyone is settled and they're there. Follow a set, clear agenda so people have time to think about their contributions and ideas before presenting them. There's nothing worse than walking into a meeting and the agenda is all over the place. The 1 minute you're discussing this, the question that you're getting is about something that's later on in the agenda or something that you've passed, etc. So follow the order, close off issues or agenda items, ask for questions, then you move on to the next one so that there's order. Call on everyone who wants to participate in the discussion. If you see quieter people, find ways of bringing them in. Don't speak too loudly, and think about the other people in the surrounding office. Sometimes you end up in companies with very thin walls, what you discuss in the boardroom can be heard by colleagues that sit around. Virtual meetings etiquette. Virtual meetings has become very important now. Before COVID, there was not a lot of stress on focus on this. But now, where we do training virtually, the company that I work for, Registree, we don't have offices. We all work virtual. Some of my colleagues in the last 2 years, in fact, most of them, I've never met them face to face. It's weird, but cool at the same time, because before COVID, you had the pressure of going into the office every day, etc. Anyway, when it comes to virtual meetings, you need to have your cameras on. Companies will have different rules. There are some meetings where it's compulsory to have your camera on. You need to look at the camera. You're not staring at your own face. And then make sure that if you're in an office where there's a bit of noise or interruptions, you close the door, you close out the pets, etc. If you're working from home. Before the meeting, check the area of the camera so that there's no disruptions in the background. Like I normally work from here, but I can switch and have, the window or the house of the back of the house in my background if I'm not in a meeting. But the minute you're in a meeting, try and have the right background. Yeah, so that's it on virtual meetings. Any questions so far?
Amos, we just had one more incoming question. You spoke earlier about, I think it was related to the social media and finding the right environment. So somebody was just wondering, how do I know which type of environment is a good fit for me? Good
question. So I am hoping, is this anonymous again?
Yes.
I'm hoping, Anonymous, that you have a good understanding of your own personal values. And it's quite unfortunate because I'm looking at the time now. We've actually come to the end of our session. But my next topic is personal goal setting and values. So the right environment is the environment where you feel comfortable. You know your values, you know your behavior. Let's say you're an introvert, Anonymous, and you end up working in a company where people are very wild and out there, and people are very chatty. I think initially you would feel uncomfortable because that's not who you are. But guess what, Anonymous? When it comes to jobs, especially if it's what you've gone to varsity for and it's your career, we learn to adapt. We are very versatile as human beings. You will learn to adapt for the sake of the job, but it shouldn't be such a long stretch where you actually feel uncomfortable. So initially you will feel out of place, but you should settle. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so just from my side or from us at the Directorate for Counselling and Career Development, we just want to draw your attention to further events that we've got planned for April. So you will see that we've got events for the 13th, the 18th, the 20th, and the 25th of April. So it varies from conducting informational interviews, and you are welcome to go and find information about all these events on the MyUnisa events calendar. So it's similar to the one that you're attending at the moment. And then we would also just want to draw your attention to a publication called Grad Next. It's available free of charge, and it contains a lot of information that could be useful for you as you are entering or as you are already working. So the topics in the book ranges from personal branding, preparing for interviews, networking, writing CVs and cover letters, and also how to look for a job and starting your own business. So we would really encourage you to download this book. As I said, it is available free of charge. So I'll be posting a link to the book in the Q&A, and you are welcome to go and download it and work through it at your own time. Then just in terms of our session this morning, we would really love to hear from you. So if you have any further feedback or suggestions that you didn't have a chance to post in the Q&A, please send an email to Mrs. Mandu Makanya. Her email address is there up on the screen. We would really want to get your feedback about this session, but then also if you have any specific needs or topics that you would want us to address, you're also welcome to send that through to her. Then in terms of contacting counselling and career development, we are really interested in having conversations with you. It doesn't matter what stage in your career or your studies you are. So you're welcome to send us an email to counselling@unisa.ac.za. We also have online appointments that you can make if you've got specific issues that you would want to discuss with one of us. There is a link on the screen that you can use to book an appointment with one of our counsellors. You are also welcome to contact a counsellor at a regional office. So we have counsellors available at most of the regional offices who you could go talk to in person. So again, a link that you can use to get the contact details for the counsellor closest to you. Our website at www.unisa.ac.za/counselling contains a lot of content or information that you can use to help you manage your career, your studies, as well as your personal development. So please go and take a look at the resources that are available on our website. And then the YouTube channel at youtube.com/UNISA Careers. We've published all the previous topics that we did this year as well as last year, and we'll also be publishing the recordings of the upcoming workshops or events that you could go and watch on your own time.
So just to wrap up, ladies and gents, on personal goal setting and vision board. I did refer to this piece that we're going to cover on values. So I'm going to cover three things quickly in the next couple of minutes. Firstly, values. What are values and where do they come from? Why do values matter and the types of values? I'm going to look at goal setting, aligning goals to values, how to set SMART goals, and then enemies to goal setting, and then lastly conclude with vision board. So maybe just give me your thoughts. What do you think values are? Are you able to type in the text or the messaging functionality? What do you think values are? Lisa, you'll tell me if there are any responses.
I'll do so, Amos.
I would hate to think that out of the 32 people, we don't have a view on what values are.
We've got one incoming. Sia said that values are what is important to us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sia. Give me more, guys. Values are what's important to us, what matters to us. Okay, so thank you, Sia. You must be the spokesperson for the group. When I show you this picture, what values do you think of? What values come to mind?
Amos, we've got somebody who said compassion.
Compassion, absolutely. I'm sure there's more. When I show you this picture, what values come to mind?
We have somebody who said generosity.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. What about that one? I hope we don't have people who are so young that they don't know who that is. How about humanity for Princess Diana? Do we know who that guy is? Richard Branson, Virgin, everything Virgin. What values come to mind?
We've
The Obamas?
got, for Richard Branson, we've got energy. And I'm going to guess that the grace and humility is for Princess Diana.
Yep. Or it could be for Mamuini as well. Bishop Desmond Tutu. The point here is that as a human being, when you display or live out what's important to you, people attach those values that you hold dear to you as a person. So people see you because your behavior will be consistent in such a way that people identify certain values with you. Now, what are values? What is important to us? Like you said, what is most important to you? Values are the strongest drivers and motivators. They can stir up emotions. My dad was a pastor, and he used to say, when you get upset about people who are far from Christ, or people who are not saved, or people who live in a certain way, it shows that you are called to be a pastor or a minister. So for you as well, there must be something that stirs up emotion. It could be gender-based violence. It could be child, I don't know, discrimination of some sort. Whatever you feel strongly about and stirs up emotion about you is basically linked to your values. Values can make people to get very strong physiological and emotional reaction when their values are violated. If people violate how you feel about religion, culture, any value that you hold dearly, then there's a fight, basically. We are driven by the need to avoid pain or away from values, which I will cover, gain pleasure or towards values. So I'm going to cover those shortly. Here's a definition by Tony Roberts. Values are the fundamental beliefs that govern our lives. Sorry, they are our inspiration to act, and they guide our decisions about everything from career to personal growth. They embody the person we want to be, influencing how we treat others and how we interact in the world. Values are the core of who we are. That's a mouthful. Right. Why do values matter? So firstly, our values shape us. They make us who we are. And I think that there was a question about how to align values to the company. It's a set of rules that dictate how we interact with and judge other people. You'll notice that if you feel strongly about something, you are likely to judge other people when it comes to that thing if they behave in a certain way, because those are not your values. Determine how we view ourselves and how we see the world around us. Values matter because they deeply affect our personal relationships. We bring this set of rules into every connection or relationship we make. And with rules come expectations. We have pet peeves and our perceived concepts of how things should be done or should be. This has got a lot to do with our upbringing. We view the lens through how we've been brought up, certain things that have been instilled in us, how we've observed our parents live a life that has been normalized to us. So then you come up with a set of values based on your environment. Sometimes these rules are valid, and other times they're just silly stuff that you can unlearn as you grow older. We often impose our personal values on our partners and those around us without telling them about our expectation or need, which only results in disappointment or frustration. So if you have certain values, to the close people around you, you need to communicate where those values come from and why certain behaviors, so that people know that it matters to you. Roy Disney says, when your values are clear to you, making decisions become easier because you make the decisions based on a certain value set. Types of values: moving away values, pain including values such as cruelty, laziness, embarrassment, humiliation, failure, rejection, anything that you have come up with a set of values based on past experience that was negative, and then you come up with a set of values to counter that. We call that a pain including or moving away value. So let's say, the issue of laziness. You were brought up in a certain way and it was drilled into you. You then come up with a certain, values to counter it, right? And then the other set of values are towards values. So these are pleasure including, like freedom, security, commitment, honesty, self-actualization, learning, love, health, adventure. Those are, pleasure including values. Then we have what we call intrinsic versus extrinsic values. So intrinsic would be things like dignity, curiosity, empathy, fairness. Extrinsic would be your personal image, wealth, power, social status, etc. Just to explain, extrinsic values are centered on are focused on external approval or rewards. For instance, wealth, social status, self-image is how you are viewed from the outside. We are all motivated by all of these values to some degree, and our dominant personal values can change as we grow older. Intrinsic, on the other side, is internal. They are good in and of themselves, usually understood as good for someone or something. Happiness, pleasure, health, etc., internally focus or intrinsic values. So you need to understand and find a good balance. You cannot only have values that are extrinsic, because that means that you have not done the internal work to understand what makes you feel happy and, which values are driven from internal.
Thank you, Amos. There's no further questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, there was just one comment that somebody made earlier in connection with, when you were speaking. Somebody just commented that I like that we need to reframe how we view our lives. Our struggles were designed to make us strong people. It changes the whole narrative, black child, victorious mentality. So one of our audience members just appreciated where you talked about how our challenges can make us stronger in terms of how we deal with things going forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. So if you look at my T-shirt, I'm sure a lot of people don't know where this place is. This is my place of birth. And just to conclude on the same note, for a lot of us, in fact, everyone, we don't choose where we get born and what environment or class we get born into. There's nothing you can do about it. The best thing you can do is to take the struggles, learn from it, and find strength and power in it to influence your future. My upbringing was very insignificant as well. I grew up on a farm somewhere between Plettenberg Bay and Knysna. I went to a typical farm school. I've got 3 kids now, and the few times I've taken them home and I've shown them the distance we used to walk from home to school, being exactly 5 kilometers one way without shoes at the time, they actually cannot believe it. But what has that done to me? It has not scarred me for life. It has inspired me to work hard and make sure that my life is not the same, and not the same for my kids as well. So on your journey right now, as you enter the place of work, I want to wish you all the best and all the success. It is up to you how far you want to go by your hunger to improve yourself and find the right information, surround yourself with right people, get rid of negative people. If you've got anyone that's holding you back, that doesn't trust you, that doesn't believe in you, I don't care if they're family or a partner, make sure that you remove yourself from them, because life is hard and you need people that believe in you, and you need to create the environment where you are able to live your best life. And I'm sure a lot of you are young. I'm approaching 50, and one thing that stuck with me for the longest time, and I think I shared it last time as well, I've got a very close friend from Nigeria that I met while I was living in the UK. She lives in the UK as well. And she said to me, when she's retired and she's sitting on a rocking chair, she doesn't want to regret anything that she has not done. She rather wants to regret something that she has done. So my message to you, go out there and live your fullest life. Don't have any regrets. Don't have any fear as well. We live in an age where information is so easily available. If you're not sure of anything, ask somebody at UNISA, find somebody on LinkedIn, reach out and get all the information so that you can be empowered. So I wish you all the best. God bless you. Reach out if you need anything via LinkedIn. Mrs. Makanya and Lisa, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. I've posted a link to your LinkedIn profile on the Q&A. So, thank you for having that open invitation. And from our own experience, you do interact and you do respond on LinkedIn. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
I'm just going to invite my colleague, Mr. Bekim Zorbi, to end off the session for us.
Thank you, Lisa, and good day all. I take this opportunity on behalf of my colleagues and Directorate for Counseling and Career Development at UNISA to say thank you to our guest speaker, Mr. Amos Kova. We are grateful for the time, sir, and effort you took to share your knowledge and expertise with our students. You shared the necessary skills that they will need in order to overcome challenges at the workplace. And they will also use those skills to adapt in the workplace. I like the way you answered their questions. You always give the practical examples. You don't say, I think this will work, but you give examples that worked for you. So I have no doubt that this session will be helpful to them. It will empower them. As Directorate for Counseling and Career Development, we appreciate the support that you always give us and the contribution that you are making to equip and to empower students. Thank you so much, Amos.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.